Hello students, my name is Deepak Singhal and I'll be taking the most important question in this lecture, in this class, that how you should go for the optionals, and if you are facing the difficulty in choosing the optionals, then this class will be very advantageous for you. In this session, we'll be talking about why and how history becomes one of the good choice for the students if they are hoping to clear this civil services examination. In my whole career of 5 years, I have seen students asking me such questions, sir, what should be the subject which will give us above 300 marks? How can we choose an optional subject? What should be the strategy for choosing the optional subject? And if we choose the optionals, will we able to cover the syllabus within time? Will be able to cover and revise the syllabus within time? Then I always tell them, choose the optional accordingly, because optional is something which will be a game changer for you. And history is something which is gonna be a game changer if you are choosing it. Let me clear various aspects of this subject, the beauty of this subject, why a student should go for the history, and what else history can offer you. One of the most advantaged and one of the most important thing which a student can get from history is that this subject has no background at all. You need not to study about the background of it. You don't need any background if you are going to opt for this history optional. It is not like other optional subjects which the UPSC is offering, which require you to have some background knowledge. Only then you can perform well. Because in my career of 5 years, I have seen students from the science and commerce background who are clearing this examination equally well as the students of humanity background are clearing. This history has no background at all, which makes it very easy for you to actually score good marks. Now the second query which the students are asking me, sir, is this subject scoring? And I always tell them, UPSC is giving you optional subjects. It is up to you that if you are giving your 100% as far as the optional subject is concerned. Students tell me, sir, history is boring because it consists of so many facts and figures and dates. You need to remember them all. I just need to clear this confusion from your mind, that if you are thinking that history is something, a bundle of facts, then you are wrong. Facts is not history, and history does not require the facts which the other subjects are requiring in the UPSC list. The facts in history are comparatively much lower than other subjects. And remember, history is not a story. History is not a story where you just write a story in the examination paper and you will get the marks. Because if you are writing a story in this optional, then the examiner will gonna evaluate your answer sheets in that way only. As far as this optional is concerned, there are various other things which this history can offer you and no other optional can. The second thing, which is history, which the history is very important, and I often ask the students that when you are choosing the optional, have you ever given it a thought that choosing the optional should be also guided by the interviews? Means you should also think about the interview if you are choosing the optional subject. Because while choosing the optional, we just need and we just think of one thing, that we just want to get through this examination. We just want this examination, this written examination to get over, and we just want to qualify that. But when the interview stage comes and when you fail there, I just want you to save from that heartbreaking situation. Because there are many students who are clearing the written paper, but when the interview situation is there, they are failing there. And interview is something which requires an overall personality development, the overall grooming of a civil servant, and in that aspect, history is something which gonna help you. How? I always use one quote when I teach the students in my lecture, that history is something which is an old wine in a new bottle. What does that mean? It means that history gives you eyes. History gives you those dimensions where you can solve the modern day problems, because history is something which can present before you of various things, a complete background of that story, a complete analysis of that, and without history you cannot solve it. Because if I see the contribution of this subject in the UPSC, GS and prelims, I can guarantee that prelims contribution of history is around 32 to 35 marks question, and in the GS you get 130 to 140 marks question. So history is something which is there, which is having the heavy contribution in the UPSC. Not just the direct contribution is important for this subject, but the indirect contribution is also very important for the other optionals. For example, if you are reading the international relations, if you are reading India and the world, you need this history, because 90% of the IR is all about history. Only 10% is something which is current. History about the international relations, for example, if you are not knowing about various protocols, you cannot decide about, you cannot judge the relation of a present day country with that. The Sino-Indian relations cannot be presented as if you do not know the history behind it. So history is something which is very important. For example, I give you an example of that. When the foreign policy of India is concerned, and when we go on describing the foreign policy of India, don't we take into account the British foreign policies, what the Britishers did? You always mention in the answers what Nehru did in the foreign policy. And what is that? It is the modern day history and the post-independence part. So without knowing that, you cannot judge the present day scenario. So it is one of the examples that why history is important. History is not just about facts. History is interesting if you are reading it in a defined manner. Very good thing with this optional, which I tell the students very often, is that this subject has a defined syllabus. UPSC is defining every topic very beautifully related to this subject, which can give you a feel. So the syllabus is very long and lengthy, but when you are reading it carefully, you will get a feel that this is very easy to cover. Because every topic in history is very much connected with each other. Let me give you an example of that. Suppose if you are teaching about the prehistoric age of India, and if you need to study about the Indus Valley civilization, I always tell students that history is not something which is happening all of a sudden. History is something which has a connection. The prehistoric age has a connection with the civilization part, because it is there in the prehistoric culture. When the humans started living at one place, when the humans started believing in agriculture, when the humans started living a settled life, and when they left the nomadic lifestyle. Because who were we? We were just hunter and gatherers. Later we started a settled life, and it was later on when you started thinking of a civilization. Because when we teach history, we always tell the students that civilization is not possible if you are not residing at one place. If you are living a nomadic lifestyle, at that point civilization is not possible for you. Civilization will become possible when you start living at one place. And start living at one place can only be possible when you know the use of agriculture. And that agriculture cannot come to you all of a sudden, because history is not a sudden. History takes time to change. So all these are the examples of how beautifully this subject can be presented. The most important thing about the defined syllabus which this subject is having, because history is something which cannot be changed so often, because the possibility of current in this subject is negligible. That is why this subject is very easy to cover. The most important thing is that this subject will also give you an opportunity of revising it before your mains date comes. And that is the most important thing, believe me. Because if you are choosing an optional and if you are not being able to revise it within the time, then there is no point of choosing it. Covering the syllabus is something different than revising that syllabus, and UPSC needs revision. There is a quote for the civil aspirants who are appearing for the UPSC that test yourself 36 times before UPSC test you. How will you test yourself? Unless you do not know what this syllabus is all about, unless you do not revise that syllabus many times, how will you test your knowledge? Because if UPSC will test you and you are not knowing about your personality, the confidence you are having, then it becomes very much difficult for you to clear this examination. And I don't want that to happen. Contribution, we told, not only the direct but the indirect contribution is also very important. Not only the marking scheme of this subject is very important, but this subject is that subject which will groom your personality, not for clearing your mains but also for clearing your interviews. I have seen many people, some of them are my students too, who have cleared this examination, and they are calling me. They call me sometimes and say, "Sir, history is something which is even helping us in our career of being a civil servant." Because history is something which provides us the eyes that how to look at one thing. Because being in school and being in college is something very different. Because in school you are given the form of discipline, and in the college you are given the form of evaluation. And this phase of discipline and evaluation is something which the history will talk every time. History requires the evaluation of everything very particularly. You cannot judge anything just all of a sudden you feel like this is something and this should be the result of that. No. History requires an evaluation. History will give you various viewpoints of how that situation can be solved. It means it can present various experiences before you. And this is why I tell the students that this is the most beautiful subject you can opt for. Because believe me and believe this one point, that answer writing is something which is also very important for clearing this examination. And no other subject than history can present such an answer writing skill if you want to be a real civil servant. And most important thing about this optional is that there is abundance of material in the market. You just need a guidance that how we should read it, what we can and what we should read and what we should leave. And all these guidance can only be provided to you when you have a good teacher. And this optional can offer you abundance of things. Not only this optional is scientific, economic, political, but this optional, I would say, is the mother of all the social sciences. This optional is the mother of all the subjects of humanities. Say, for example, sir, economy. If you are reading something about the world economy, and in order to read something about the world economy, if somebody is talking about the Great Depression, if somebody is saying about the Great Depression, if somebody is talking about the Adam Smith, that what idea he gave, from where will you get those ideas? Because these are not of the current. You will have to go back to history in order to read that. What was the Great Depression? What happened? And all this is a part of the contemporary history and the modern ones. So this is something which will give you a glimpse of this subject, that how beautifully this can be explained. So in this video, this will be all about the subject which I would like to give to you all. So in the next session, we will be describing something about that how this history should be read. So this is all about history optionals. We'll see you in the next session. Thank you.